Parentology. Here we are again for another weekly video. Today is Sunday, November 14th. It's our son's birthday, so we're happy, and we hope you're happy too.
He's 26.
And we're excited. He's a man. He's been a man for a while, I should add. It's week 13. We're talking about financial power of attorney and elder abuse. And before we get started, I'm doing a public service announcement. I'm having a colonoscopy this week. I want all of you to talk to your family members about doing regular preventive checkups. So a lot of this went by the wayside during the pandemic. The standard now is to have colonoscopies starting at age 45 and repeating them periodically thereafter. If you don't have any risks or any problems, you do it every 10 years. If you're special like me, you do it every 3 years, which is fine. So tell your family members that they need to be going to the doctor, getting their checkups, getting their mammograms, getting their PSA checked, getting their colonoscopies, and do that when you see them at Thanksgiving or over the winter break.
It's all relevant to this chapter right here that we did on cancer. It's the real deal, and we got to do better in terms of preventative care. Okay, let's go on down to the next week. All right,
Week 13.
Here it is. All right, and this is very relevant to what we did on week 11. Just want to remind you that really sad case where there was a woman who was not closely watching the investors that were taking her mom's funds, and she got overbilled. Remember, there was a whole tragedy about watching how people invest your money, and so that's what this durable power of attorney financial is all about. So I can't even think right now, but let's get right into it. Okay.
Okay. Alrighty, so let's scroll. Do you want to just open that up? The AARP Financial Power of Attorney. So this is a quick, short, easy document just explaining what a financial power of attorney is. A lot of times you'll see power of attorney abbreviated as POA. And what it is it's a legal written document, typically signed with witnesses and made official, so that we know reliably that you, the person who is purported to have signed this document, is actually the person who signed it. You sign a document to give someone else the authority to carry out financial transactions. So I, the person who has the bank account or owns the home or owns the car, is the principal. And the person that I'm assigning that authority to is my agent, like a real estate agent. When I go to buy a house, I hire a real estate agent to represent me in the transaction. So you can have a financial power of attorney naming someone as the attorney in fact or agent for you, and then they will carry out your wishes or take care of your financial affairs if you are limited capacity and can't do it yourself anymore. So you can design, and certainly I've seen financial power of attorney documents. Typically, they will have a very wide range of responsibilities. So you can check the box that says, I will let, as I did with John, I said, you can do anything for me. I trust you completely. You can buy and sell real estate. You can buy and sell cars. You can write checks on the bank account. You can handle my 401k. Anything under the sun that deals with money and finances, you can handle for me. And of course, because I'm a lawyer, I like to have layers and layers and layers. So he's number one. My 26-year-old son's number two. My 20-year-old son's number three, I think. And so we have layers in case someone isn't able to serve or they're unavailable or they've moved or something like that.
And so you should talk to your parents and discuss whether or not they want you to be a power of attorney. At the very least, they need to keep you in the loop in terms of finances that are family related.
Yes. And we've done this with my brother-in-law. He's single. He's 68. He lives alone. And he has given us power of attorney so that we help him manage his IRA account. And we, in case he gets into a car accident, because he drives a lot for work or something like that, where he's not able to pay us bills, we'd be able to step in and take care of him, take care of his finances.
And one of the first things we discovered when he gave us that power of attorney was he was experiencing an absolute mirror image of the case that we were talking about in terms of a quote-unquote financial planner who was siphoning off a lot of his funds. So the first thing we did was we extracted that money and put it into his own personal Fidelity account that we help him manage.
There you go. And now his account's doing really well. He's excited and happy.
Yeah.
So, okay. So Okay, let's scroll down. There's different types of power of attorneys based on when they go into effect and how long they last. The conventional type is, let's say I'm doing a real estate transaction and I can't be in town. I have to leave town on business. And I want to let John or my neighbor or my friend or my partner sign documents for me while I'm not here. So I would sign a conventional power of attorney, and it might only last for a set period of time. Maybe I'm giving it for a month or a week or a year, and or if I have no end date, it will end when I become incapacitated. Another common type of power of attorney is a springing power of attorney. And the word springing means it springs into effect. So that it goes into effect only when some other condition has been satisfied, like the person becoming incapacitated. So in that case, someone says, well, I want to be able to handle all of my financial affairs myself until I am no longer able to do so. Then I name someone else as my financial power of attorney. Now, as a lawyer, the risk with that is then now you have to decide and determine when that person is incapacitated. So it does create a little bit of complexity. What I have done and what I like to do is a durable power of attorney. If you have someone that you trust, who is rock solid, that you know isn't going to steal your money, and you are very, very sure that you like the way they handle financial affairs, like I feel about John.
And like my brother felt about us,
Yes,
so
yes.
it was important.
So you can sign a durable power of attorney, which means it goes into effect the day you sign it, and it stays in effect for the rest of your life unless you cancel it. And we'll talk later about how to cancel these things. So that's the easiest, most straightforward, probably most commonly seen type of durable power of attorney. And then you don't have to worry about having a doctor or a judge or someone determine, oh, you are incapacitated now. Okay, so how do you choose an agent? Well, you want someone that you trust. You want someone that is going to be very loyal to you and do what's in your best interests. You want someone who's good with money, and you want someone who keeps good records, who can kind of handle the paperwork that's involved. You want someone that's probably good at navigating, dealing with banks or dealing with retirement plans or, just things like that. So if you might have a person who would be great at handling, taking you to the doctor and bringing you food and washing your clothes, but they might be terrible at handling money. So that person would be great for being your durable power of attorney for healthcare, but maybe not the best choice for being durable power of attorney for financial. Sometimes, and you need to kind of be aware of this, sometimes banks and financial institutions will require their own form. So that's also something that you might have to do in addition to having an official legally drafted financial power of attorney. You might have to go to that person's bank and say, hey, do you need a special form for me to be able to act on behalf of my relative or my friend or my neighbor or anything like that. It's really important to remember when you are the agent and you're wielding this power of authority as the agent, you don't own the bank account. You don't own their assets. You don't get to use their assets for your benefit. You don't get to do any of this for your benefit. Your access to those assets is only to carry out what is necessary for that person's benefit. So you're paying their mortgage, you're paying their rent, you're paying their car bill, you're paying their taxes, you're making sure that their electricity stays on. And so you're just doing what they would do if they still had capacity. Now you can cancel it anytime you want. This isn't indentured servitude or anything like that. You can cancel it. You tear it up. You send a letter saying, I have canceled your power of attorney. You sign a new one. So if you have a new one with a later date, it will supersede that prior power of attorney. And then the most recent one will be the one that goes into effect. And if you do revoke it, you should tell the person, hey, you're not my power of attorney anymore. And maybe tell your financial institutions if necessary. If that person has been acting on your behalf, you can notify your bank, your retirement plan, et cetera, to say, yeah, this person doesn't have my permission anymore to do these things.
So choose wisely.
Yeah, exactly.
And and if something doesn't, if it the old adage, if it doesn't feel right, it's because it's not right, and then you just pull the plug. So,
now, I am not endorsing any one particular product, but something I have been doing more recently is using an app to monitor my finances. So it kind of shows me on a daily basis and on a weekly basis what my net worth is, what bills have come in and been paid from the bank account. And so every now and then I'll see something come across and I'll say, well, what's that? And I have to go look at it and say, okay, and now I remember and
You can
categorize
tell
it.
the name of the app.
Yeah,
Go
it's
ahead.
I use the Mint app, but like I said, that's just one that was the first one I tried. You can Google, what apps are helpful to manage. And for me, I like it because it puts everything in one place. Now, the reason I'm talking about this app is, let's say you have an older family member who needs someone to pay their bills. It might not be a bad idea to have a second family member that has, or multiple family members that have access to the Mint app, so that everyone is very transparent about where the money's going, and watching to make sure that there wasn't suddenly a check written for $15,000 or something like that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be bad behavior. One of my students in another class was helping her former landlady who's in her 90s, and she and another woman were helping this person get health care and helping taking her to the doctor. And her friend calls her up and says, hey, is this lady really wealthy? Because she just transferred $100,000 in stock to me. And I am kind of wondering what's up with that. And they figured out she meant to transfer like, $100 of stock and hit too many zeros, or had a problem talking on the phone or something like that. So these things can happen. It can be a mistake, it can be abuse, and so it's good to have oversight and monitoring.
I use the Julia app where I say, hey, what's going on in the Mint app?
And I show him my phone. Last week was a rough week, and then the stock market recovered.
There you go.
So it's all good.
All right.
Okay. Okay, let's go on to elder abuse. Okay, so elder abuse is a worldwide issue. We definitely struggle with elder abuse in the US. The number one type of elder abuse that we see in the US is financial elder abuse by a member of the family.
Exactly what we were just discussing.
So we see this happening. Typically, the people who are committing the elder abuse are those people who have access to the elders. So it's going to be family members. It's going to be trusted healthcare practitioners. So if the person's in assisted living, or if they're in a nursing home, it could be one of the staff in one of those facilities. So okay, and so this is the graph that shows the number one thing is financial elder abuse, the number two thing is potential neglect, the number three thing is emotional abuse. And thankfully, physical abuse and sexual abuse tend to be farther down on the list of things that happen, but they still do happen, and it's a tragedy when that happens. 90% of abusers are family members, and so this doesn't necessarily mean that family members are evil, terrible people. Sometimes people are overwhelmed with caregiving. And so we really have to think about the caregivers and the burden on the caregivers and what we can do to relieve that as well. Why is elder abuse not reported? Think about it. 93% of elder abuse is not reported. It's because the people doing it are your son, your grandson, your niece, your wife. These are the people closest to you. The elderly people are ashamed. They don't want to get the family member in trouble. They're hoping it's going to work out. And sometimes they're very vulnerable people with dementia. So they may not be seen as credible witnesses. Having dementia is a huge risk factor for being a victim of elder abuse. So 47% of participants in that study were victims of elder abuse. We see that experiencing elder abuse is also a major risk factor for death. So self-neglect is associated with a higher death rate versus, go down.
Sorry. There we go.
Okay.
There we go.
And then if you have a confirmed elder abuse case, the victim is twice as likely to die. Suspected elder abuse is 1.38 times more likely to die. So it is a huge risk factor for bad outcomes. The World Health Organization has put together some great materials, again, because we're seeing elder abuse in every country in the world. It's not just a US problem. So we have to be alert, I think, to the fact that this happens. And we have to be alert, I think, to what are the risk factors for why it happens and what can we do to prevent it. So the types of abuse that we see are physical abuse, and you may see signs of bruising or scrapes, especially around the wrists. You might see broken glasses. You might see broken, dentures or things like that. You might see the person being isolated. If you want to go visit grandma and then The nephew who lives with her says, no, 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 you can't come in. She's sleeping and she's always sleeping and she's never available. That is an issue. Psychological or emotional abuse, telling the person you're worthless, no one cares about you, you're stupid, blah, blah, blah. To, as my son says, that's negging. You're negging that person so that they won't fight back against you.
It's called gaslighting too.
Yes. Financial exploitation. We see this a lot, unfortunately, with caregivers who are hired to take care of people, and the next thing you know, their credit cards are being run up, their bank accounts are being emptied out, their checks are being stolen, their jewelry is being stolen, and we see this time and time and time again. And you could have neglect or abandonment where the person who's supposed to be taking care of them is not providing them with the basics of food and shelter and health care.
And we've said this a number of times. It's a family member or
a healthcare worker, someone in a position of trust, which is not good. So I love this study because it really goes through what are the risk factors for both the victim and the perpetrator. So the risk factors for the victim are exactly what you would think: having a significant disability, having poor physical health, so you're not able to get out, having depression. When you have significant depression, as we know, older people tend to be higher risk. You may not have the ability or the wherewithal to complain and to reach out and to have connections with people to get help. Being low income. And what happens when you have a lot of money? As one of my law school professors used to say, rich people get better stuff. If you have a lot of money and your higher socioeconomic status, you may have a house cleaner that comes to your house once a week. You may have a gardener that comes and cuts your grass once a week. You may have people who come in and out of your house who can say, wait a minute, I haven't seen her lately. Or wait a minute, I saw her and she didn't look right. She had bruises on her face. And so being low income and maybe being more isolated as a result, you're not getting out, you're not doing things, you don't have people coming in and out of your house, can be a strong risk factor. And of course, social isolation and cognitive impairment are huge. What are the risk factors for the perpetrator? Depression. Again, this person is overwhelmed being a caregiver. They might have alcohol and drug abuse problems, and they're very likely to be both living with the person that they are victimizing and also dependent upon them financially, as a member of the family, relationally or emotionally. And so when you have that older person living with one relative or one friend, that person could be the high risk to be a perpetrator. So we have a couple little clips talking about some of the things that go on about financial abuse. Seniors are targeted for financial abuse because they may have accumulated assets, so they may be more likely to have money. Seniors may not say anything because they are ashamed, and I think this is true worldwide. But it can be an issue of shame and stigma. If you are from a culture like the Chinese culture, where filial piety and respect for the elders is the norm, and that's what's expected. And so, if your family member is acting outside that norm, you may be very ashamed to admit it. That, what's wrong with me that my kids aren't treating me the way that, people are supposed to treat their parents. You can keep scrolling, go down. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about loneliness and isolation. It's a huge risk factor for elder abuse. It's also a huge risk factor for just health problems in general for the elderly. I find this so interesting. Loneliness is the equivalent from a physical health standpoint of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Now, I'm not a smoker. I don't know how many cigarettes are in a pack of cigarettes, but that seems like a lot of cigarettes. So it has a very profound effect on health. Older people tend to be isolated. When they become isolated and lonely, they are at much higher risk for both physical and mental decline because they're not communicating, they're not talking,
they're not engaged.
They're not engaged, they're not walking around, they're getting less exercise. So it increases your risk of dementia. And it's a very common issue among older people. The factors that increase isolation and increase loneliness are being older. So when you get to be 80 and older, a lot of your peers and family members have died. So your social circle shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And then you might have chronic health problems. So you might have difficulty driving. You might have difficulty walking to the mailbox. You might have difficulty leaving your house at all. You might have lost contact with family. And so often in the US, I grew up back east and I've lived in California for a long time. I'm trying to caregive for my dad who lives in Louisiana. And it's hard, because I'm 1,500 miles away trying to manage his health and watch his test results and talk to his doctors and things like that.
Yeah, my mom lived till she was 95, so she outlived 99.9% of her cohort, and then she made new friends with a bunch of 70-year-olds, and then began to outlive all of them. So so that's tough getting all this. That's why having your family there to support you is important.
Yeah. And again, living with low income. I have certainly talked to people who were pretty well off in California that when they got older, they had a personal trainer that came 4 times a week. That's awesome. And you're engaged with that person. I would love to see a volunteer program where people who are retired and younger or people who are high school or college would just take older people for walks or go just talk to them for 30 minutes. It would be amazing. And changing family structures. We have fewer people getting married. We have fewer multi-generational, types of situations where everybody lives on the same block. And so we have a little bit of fragmenting of the family structure right now. And what do we need to do? We need to have better transportation for seniors. We need to have more integration of seniors into their communities. Wouldn't it be great if our older people would go into our kindergartens? Maybe not during a pandemic, but when things are better. If our older people could read books to the kindergartners in our elementary schools, I mean, everybody would just be so happy. And we need to have use of technology. And I think there's enormous opportunities in terms of using technology to help seniors both connect with others and also to allow monitoring. My stepdad lives in Florida. He's had recent hip surgery. He's unstable on his feet. He's got a lot of health issues. And I would love to just have a tracker so I could say, okay, he's asleep right now, or okay, I know that he hasn't fallen today, because I worry about these things when they happen.
I have a tracker on my key right here.
Yes. We always know where Dr. Walsh is.
Down there surfing.
The key fob is still on the beach. Yeah. Okay, so scroll down.
I think that's about it.
Is that it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And what's really cool though is that the generation that is now entering retirement and the generation that we're talking about, your parents, there's a good chance that they are familiar with technology. So this is a brave new world in terms of using technology.
Absolutely. So our discussion this week is, have you seen evidence of elder abuse? How did you feel about it? And what do you think we should be doing? How can we prevent elder abuse? How do we address it, both from the victim side and the perpetrator side? What do we need to do, knowing the risk factors that we know from that World Health Organization study? How can we stop elder abuse? How can we protect this precious, precious resource that we have of older people in all of our families and all of our communities?
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, guys. Beautiful day outside. Get out there and enjoy it. Peace. And we're going to see you guys next time. Right on.